This video is brought to you by contributions to patreon.com/Henry Kathman from viewers like you. Thank you. In 2012, Eric Barone uploaded a trailer to Steam Greenlight, a now defunct program that would allow independent game developers to publish their games if they were to receive enough approval from the community. Under the username Concerned Ape, Barone's trailer pitched a game mimicking the style and gameplay of Harvest Moon, as he felt that the quality of the series had diminished to the point of wanting to make a better version of the game himself. Inspired by established series like Animal Crossing and Rune Factory, as well as recent indie successes like Minecraft and Terraria, Barone sought to combine the questing, combat, and social mechanics seen in these games, and apply them to the kind of game that a lot of people dismissed as being far too niche to ever reach mainstream success. Despite that, Barone would work tirelessly over the next 4 years to bring this game to life, meticulously doing the programming, art, music, and writing all by himself before releasing that game on February 26, 2016. And that game was Stardew Valley. Okay, you already knew the game that I was talking about. I mean, it's already in the title of this video probably, so I don't know why I decided to bury the lead on this one like the hack and the fraud that I am. It's sometimes hard to comprehend just how much Stardew Valley changed the world of games. While we previously had casual simulation games like the aforementioned Harvest Moon and Animal Crossing, as well as The Sims, Boku no Natsuyasumi, and the Tycoon series, Stardew Valley set itself apart through its open-ended gameplay, general accessibility, and compelling characters, resulting in a game that could have players creating dynamic stories unique to them. Honestly, half of the fun of this game was just watching and listening to other people's experiences, just so that you could hear about all the things that they did differently. From the kinds of crops that they farmed, whether or not they decided to fish or go mining, or which members of the community that they decided to befriend and even fall in love with.
This is the correct choice, and I will not be taking any questions at this time.
All of these individualized experiences were part of the reason that Stardew Valley maintains such an active community to this day, where even 6 years later, it is still in the top 150 most watched games on Twitch, is one of the most active modding communities, and is still being updated and expanded by Barone as of December of 2021. And when looking more broadly, the reach of Stardew Valley can be felt across the rest of the game industry, as more and more developers seek to recreate the charm and success of Stardew Valley in their own games. It's gotten to the point where some people have grown somewhat cynical towards games that seek to provide players with a source of peaceful comfort, as now we have even large companies like Square Enix and Disney dipping their toe into this kind of life sim non-violent game, only for fans to declare them paling in comparison to their beloved Stardew Valley. For so many people, there was something about this game that felt completely different from what we had seen before. Where most other indie games at the time were either about hardcore survival or presenting an experimental narrative, Stardew Valley gave players a world that didn't just have intricate systems to master. There was also a community of characters who felt welcoming yet nuanced enough to create an entire genre of games that sought to recreate this kind of experience again. A genre that was iterated and expanded upon enough to become this subgenre that we now know as the Wholesome game. Now, we could spend this entire video deconstructing genre and the classifications that we use to define art, like video games, but I don't really think it's my place to act as an arbiter of who can and can't be a part of this fledgling genre. Besides, Innuendo Studios already made that video with the adventure game genre. Links below. So, I think it's better to think of this genre less in terms of a checklist and more of a series of traits that games can pick and choose from in order to better fit that platonic ideal of a wholesome game. So, instead of bloviating on genre conventions, I think the best way to showcase what I would want to see out of wholesome games is by talking about my current platonic ideal. Wylde Flowers, developed by Studio Drydock. Wylde Flowers was very much developed to act as a clear response to Stardew Valley. So much so that I wouldn't be surprised if the company's pitch to Apple was, "Hey, we can make you a mobile Stardew Valley for Apple Arcade." Similar to Stardew Valley, you also have a farm that you can progressively improve. You can also mine, fish, cook, and gift items to townsfolk, and eventually get closer to the inhabitants of your community. And similar to other Wholesome games, there is a concerted effort to help make Wylde Flowers more accessible to certain degrees. First, by creating different quality of life updates, such as providing unlimited inventory space, as well as an option to skip the fishing minigame, the worst part of Stardew Valley, but also in the sense that it attempts to create a diverse set of characters of different nationalities, gender identities, and sexualities. All of this is assisted by an exceptionally talented cast of actors fully voicing every piece of dialogue, and an extra narrative and mechanical layer that I would want to leave unspoiled for the moment. In these first impressions, Wylde Flowers appears like it's attempting to be the most accessible and approachable version of this kind of game as possible, to the point where some might accuse this game of being a bit unassuming and watered down. And don't get me wrong, the game never tries to give you any especially difficult tasks throughout the story. Rather, its challenges lie in the ways that it forces players to contend with the added layers of complexity that arise when living in a smaller community. At this point, I do feel this need to address some of the shortcomings that some have leveled at this game. Certain players are dismayed by the lack of customization in the story. Unlike other modern farm sims like Stardew Valley and My Time in Portia, which sees you controlling an original player avatar, this game sees you playing Tara Wylde, a young woman who had moved to the island of Fairhaven after losing her job and breaking off her engagement. While players can manage the Wylde farm however they may wish, there aren't any clothing or furniture options that are available to players, eschewing these elements of personal expression, and instead leaving Tara perpetually clothed in her red dress and leather jacket outfit, living in a house that lies in permanent stasis, even after being married.
Though, you gotta admit, that leather jacket is pretty bomb. I'm just saying, if you had to make Tara wear only one outfit in the game, this was a pretty good choice to go with. Might have changed the boots, though. I mean, you are working on a farm, Tara. You don't have to prove anything to anyone by wearing those heels all the time. Maybe swap them out for a pair of nice insulated work boots. You know, just something to give you a little bit more arch support and protection. I don't want to come off as condescending here or anything. I'm not exactly a fashion expert myself. I'm just saying, you could definitely pull off that lace-up boot look, Tara. Yeah. Still a bomb-ass jacket.
While it might be nice to have some degree of variety in the outfits that players can wear, especially as the seasons progress, being forced to inhabit this role of Tara helped me to better engage with the characters and stories she began to encounter in her new home. This is also assisted by the charming performance brought about by Tara's voice actor, Valerie Rose Lohman, who doesn't just help to bring a sense of levity and affability to the character, but also helps to add an element of personality and rapport to her interactions with the rest of the voice cast. But at the same time, even though Lohman is joined by a slew of great actors from the likes of Baraka May, Erika Ishii, and Cissy Jones, that same reliance on making every piece of dialogue spoken out loud causes several different pieces of repeated dialogue to become increasingly grating as time goes on. Furthermore, the depth of the game's farm simulator elements pales in comparisons to the likes of Stardew Valley, as the players can immediately break the game's economy in some fairly accessible exploits, which can cause the farming mechanics to become a bit of an afterthought.
Though despite these mechanical shortcomings and the slight levels of jank that rear its head now and again, Wylde Flowers remains my ideal for the wholesome genre through its narrative.
When Tara moves to the island of Fairhaven, all seems quite similar to what players might expect out of this kind of genre. A large family farm to begin fixing up, some neighbors to become acquainted with, and a grandparent to care for. And while games like Stardew Valley depict its town as somewhat hostile initially, the residents of Fairhaven make an effort to be as welcoming to Tara as possible. However, even those early moments indicate how that welcoming exterior hides some difficulties within the townspeople of Fairhaven. When you meet Otto, the mayor of the city, he gives you the obligatory meet every character quest that you see in these kinds of games. Though, in this case, it is done as a cynical attempt to help drum up political support. Sophia, the peppy owner of the town's diner, immediately talks about helping to match you with one of the eligible single people in town. But we can see how that somewhat smothering personality is partially influenced by the recent death of her husband Giacomo, an attitude that is also responsible for pushing away her younger daughter Juliet. And speaking of those romanceable characters, one of the first of such characters you can encounter is Cameron, who is an extremely charming and helpful guy who turned out to be a recovering addict that was able to save himself after becoming a messenger for the League of the Conscious Mind. And if you're a bit unsure about an organization that calls itself the League of the Conscious Mind, put a pin in that. Throughout this initial arrival, Tara is assisted and encouraged by her grandmother Hazel, who proves to not only act as a helpful guide in teaching Tara the ways of farming, but also a guide in the social sense in teaching Tara how to navigate the community of Fairhaven.
While people familiar with Wylde Flowers' contemporaries might find later plot developments with her predictable, Hazel's presence is a microcosm of the ways that Wylde Flowers' writing surpasses its inspirations. While games like Stardew Valley and Harvest Moon have a variety of characters with compelling inner lives, and oftentimes touch upon heady themes of abuse and trauma, characters like Hazel tend to be an afterthought in the narratives, being seen as avenues to get the farm more so than a family member that the player character had recently lost. I mean, the fact that fans of Stardew Valley fixated more on the grandpa bed more so than his actual character kinda says it all, right? And trust me, fans of Stardew Valley do be fixating on those characters. Though, can't say I blame them though. I mean, look at that thing. Like, spindly legs, no back support, only a couple of pillows. Like, what are you doing, man? If I had to make a top 5 list of the worst beds in all of video games, this is definitely showing up on that list. Not sure where though. Probably close by to the bed in Ocarina of Time and N64 version, not the 3DS.
But unlike those games, Wylde Flowers provides Hazel with a history and personality that gives her a sense of familiarity with Tara, which helps to bring some humanity to a role that these games often shortchange for the sake of their mechanics, as well as a through line to the central conceit of this game's story and mechanics. A few days after her arrival, Tara happens upon a mysterious group of masked individuals walking into the woods with Hazel, whereupon Hazel reveals to her that the entire Wylde family had been members of a witch coven for hundreds of years, and that Tara also has those same abilities. And one could easily cut to the descriptor of Stardew Valley but with witches as a simple way to sell you on this game. But the use of magic within Wylde Flowers feels much more crucial to the role that it plays on a mechanical and narrative level. On the mechanical side, becoming more involved with the Coven provides several short-term benefits as well as long-term goals for the players. Not only can your spells and potions add a level of convenience, such as doubling your run speed, locating certain characters you can't find, and learning their favorite gifts, it also provides players with several long-term goals that they can strive for. Throughout the game, the Coven is tasked with maintaining the Wellspring, a font of magical energy that the Coven uses to protect Fairhaven by sacrificing various crops and plants that can be foraged. This task leads Tara to have to create and find various kinds of plants and materials to help assist in the various spells and rituals that the Coven might need, which acts as both an incentive to learn about certain new mechanics as well as direct players to certain elements that they might not have experienced otherwise. And while this might make it seem like this would provide a bunch of stressful busy work, this pacing is also improved by the seasonal progression. One of the many things that the Coven does to help maintain the environment of Fairhaven is helping to change the seasons, where other farm sims might cause players to lose a bunch of their crops if they forget to account for the growth time and seasonal changes. Wylde Flowers offers a much more accessible element to the farming, but not without consequence. See, if you were to say, take a long time to change the seasons during the summertime, you might cause a massive drought to hit Fairhaven, which leads to problems that Terra has to assist with. Additionally, the strange weather patterns eventually cause a woman named Giva to move to the island to study these patterns, resulting in Terra having to contemplate deceiving a potential friend or lover in order to protect her secret.
And this is where these mechanical elements intersect with the narrative. As Terra becomes more familiar with the people of Fairhaven and within the Coven, many of her new friends and neighbors grow more suspicious of these strange masked people seen within the forest. And soon, Otto is calling in town meetings to help discover the identities of those he and other residents of Fairhaven call malcontents. As devoted followers of the League of the Conscious Mind, Otto and the other church members start to create a sense of uncertainty and fear in the community.
And we can see this has a tangible effect on the relationships between the different characters in Fairhaven, as we see marriages grow dysfunctional, innocent people standing accused of witchcraft, and harsher restrictions being placed on Fairhaven under Otto. And to give these people some degree of fairness, it's somewhat understandable that they might find themselves this afraid. Alongside these escalating threats of literal witch hunts, the magic of the Wellspring becomes more unstable as the barrier between Fairhaven and the world of the Fae starts to fall away and its inhabitants, both friendly and villainous, become more visible.
While there are elements of Wylde Flowers' gameplay that some might find underdeveloped or insubstantial compared to Stardew Valley, it was this intersection of mechanical and narrative progression that compelled me onward. The more I advanced, the more I would learn about my community, and the more that I would learn new spells and magic that would automate or speed up the elements of my farming, which would in turn reward me with new mysteries and quests that enticed me to continue forward. Not just because of the new quests that were added to my journal, but because I had grown to care about these people in this town, enough to try and help them out as much as I could.
Compare this to Stardew Valley. As much as I genuinely love that game to the point of having hundreds of hours across my playthroughs on Switch and PC, after a certain number of those hours, there is a sense of artificiality that befalls that world, as characters seemed locked in a stasis no matter what they do. If you were to never marry Penny, she will always live with her mother in that trailer. Vincent and Jas will remain perpetual children, the community center forever disheveled if it weren't for the player, and Lewis always being a flaky piece of shit that Marnie can do so much better.
The point being made here is that even though Stardew Valley provides a feeling of improving elements to this community, it feels like it starts from a place of nuance and ends at a point where these people lack total agency in how they act and feel outside of this nascent positivity that feels somewhat hollow.
Consider the fact that the players of Stardew Valley eventually unlock the ability to wipe away the memories of your ex-spouses, as well as the existence of any of the children you might have had, for a price. Although this is framed as an abhorrent action on the part of the player, it shows that for all of the wonderful things that can be found within games like Stardew Valley, they still offer a very individualistic power fantasy that feels not too dissimilar to the more violent individualistic power fantasies that these Wholesome games say that they are trying to differentiate themselves from. Unlike Wylde Flowers, I was never able to get that same sense of community within Pelican Town, which I think sits at the heart of the appeal of these Wholesome games. From their earliest incarnations, Wholesome games like Stardew Valley and Animal Crossing sought to replicate the feeling of living in a small community where you can feel an intimate connection with the people who live around you. Animal Crossing, famously, was born out of lead designer Katsuya Iguchi moving away from his hometown in Chiba to work for Nintendo in Kyoto, and wanting to recapture the loneliness and uncertainty that comes with moving to a new place. And though Barone's impetus for creating Stardew Valley came out of frustration leveled at the Harvest Moon series, he often remarked on the ways that this sense of community made the series so important that he would devote 4 years of his life to recreating it. Quote, "With Harvest Moon, it was totally like a new idea. taking just a small game world, one area that you're in the entire time, and then just seeing that area change over the seasons and the characters in town changing over the years. You get really attached to it.
For many players, many aren't in a positions where they feel like they can achieve that same sense of community in their own lives. Whether it's because of a lack of unregulated social spaces, our over-reliance on automobiles and long-distance communications, to the antiquated ideologies that deny people their basic humanity. All which cause many players to seek out these wholesome games as a form of escapist power fantasies like those sought after in games like Doom and The Legend of Zelda. Though, instead of players being given fantasies where they can become legendary slayers of evil, these games offer an opportunity to live freely in a place where someone can feel accepted and welcomed by the people around them. And speaking as an enjoyer of both kinds of fantasies, something that makes me appreciate Wylde Flowers even more is the ways that it pushes back against the idea of using these kinds of games as a substitute for their real-world community. Similar to the witchcraft scene in Wylde Flowers, games can make things feel easier for a lot of people, and it can be a way to let people have a shared interest. But it doesn't come without its drawbacks.
Throughout the game, the Coven continually seeks to maintain their secret identities above all else, so much so that a majority of your missions for the Coven involve having to use your limited magical abilities to help protect this facade. While many of the characters' lived experiences make this desire for secrecy understandable, it is clear that this secrecy is unsustainable, as Fairhaven becomes increasingly polarized and their magic becomes more unstable. In a similar way, we see many players use games like Stardew Valley as their own forms of secrecy, as some will completely substitute the digital communities of these games for their real ones. For many, it is also for understandable reasons, but it nevertheless comes at the long-term detriment of those same real-world communities. Ultimately, Tara is only able to help improve her new home by rejecting the traditions of both communities and seeking ways to help bridge these two groups of people into a sense of understanding and respect. Within the Coven, it means encouraging them to reject their fear and isolation and reveal their identities to their neighbors. For the town of Fairhaven, it means teaching those residents to reject the forces that pushed them to ostracize others for the sake of maintaining the status quo.
To be clear, I do not want to equivocate the validity of these kinds of people. It shouldn't solely fall on marginalized people to help make communities more welcoming, especially if those in power are the reason why they are marginalized from that same community. But I think the reason why Wylde Flowers was such an affecting experience is that it presented a story that could help to guide people towards creating communities like those seen in Stardew Valley in the real world. While this came at a compromise of the game's overall polish and length, these are compromises that I feel we ought to strive for within our video games. And as wholesome games become a larger fixture within the game industry, if I could posit one qualifier to give a game a sense of wholesomeness, it would be that it ought to create a world that players can strive to make a reality, by getting them to think about the ways that they treat their own real-world communities and the people within them. And in doing so, perhaps help to make the world where the idea of a wholesome community isn't a fantasy. But until next time, thank you for watching. Best wishes.
Also, if you ever pick up this game for yourself and are strapped for money, it costs you like 35 coins to buy the ingredients to make a single set of fish sticks that you can in turn sell to Sophia for 100 coins. That's a 65 coin profit the whole way. Like, money's fake and stupid and all that, but y'all, I sold so many goddamn fish sticks, so you have no idea. Consider that trick a little gift from me to you.